just seeing the look on my kid's face light up when they see me there at the school. They're like, wow, I'm so proud my dad's here. Hey guys, look at my dad. It's a little thing that you can do that's probably pretty impactful, at least for that period of time to a kid.
Hi, and welcome to DADennial. My name is Mike Trank, and as you can figure, I'm a dad. I feel that's how a lot of other podcasts start, and those dads will tell you what their day is like. They'll probably talk about what it's like being a dad today too. But along with being a dad by day, I'm also a mental health counselor by night in my own private practice. As a clinician in private practice, and one of those dads sitting in pick-up and drop-off lines for school, I wanted to share what I see in this ever-changing world. So together, let's create the best version of being a millennial dad. So tonight my guest is my friend Ryan, who I've known since college, and we've actually had the pleasure of living with each other after college. He's been in the military for how long now? 20 years.
22 years.
Yeah, you've served your country and taken a couple tours of duty. So you have a well-versed background in the military, and now being a dad of two kids, I felt it was appropriate to ask you, and I'm glad that you came on to share your experiences and what you see in your world of what's good, what's bad, what you struggle with, what you see of dads and families in the military, which I know you're very close to. I was going to start the show off with our Let It Out Now. For any newcomers, you can go to Facebook or the DADennial website, where I'm going to start posting more often, as I hopefully get to with my busy dad life, to post more daily Let It Out Nows. As we know, Let It Out Now is supposed to be something silly, something fun. That's just a reminder. That's the whole point of it, is to take a minute for yourself, just to check in to see where you are. Today's actually kind of fitting in terms of just moved into a new house, and I was painting by myself. I don't know if you've ever done that, Ryan. If you had to enjoy painting a whole room by yourself, it's not it's very lonely and isolating.
Oh yeah. 22 years in the military, 6 in the reserve side, and the rest active. I've moved, last time I counted, every other year for 20 years. So basically 10 moves in 20 years. Plus all of our shenanigans in college, if you remember. For those that have gone to college or had an adventure after high school, I probably moved almost as much. In fact, one year I think I've moved 2 or 3 times in junior year. So bottom line, yeah, I've painted many a room and part of a house by myself or with limited support.
So I feel like for me, it kind of hit me as like a generational component passed down, like taping the baseboards, going back and forth to the Home Depot or the Lowe's, whatever your choice of, or Ace Hardware, whatever your choice of hardware store is there, to get paint and everything that you know. And just teaching my kids, right, the basics of painting, so they can kind of go nuts on the wall. But it definitely kind of hit me emotionally a little bit of kind of remembering of, the first time I painted and learned from my dad, and how long ago that was, and how he's elderly now and not able to come down or help. And then, right, as you were saying, Ryan, there of college, and other times I've had different friends and making fun, having fun time doing it, whether college apartments or after college and places that we've lived. And it just kind of hit me of from the smell of the paint to painting it at that different cycle of life that, now I'm passing it on to my kids, and that's what kind of, for me, what this Let It Out Now is all about, to try to stop and think and enjoy the moment, be present, be mindful and aware of these moments and these special things happening in life. And that's where I kind of wanted to start today, of special moments, special things of life. And me and Ryan go way back, so it's special now that you were overseas for the past few years, so now we're finally in the same time zone again, so we're able to communicate more and kind of spend more time and at least talk to each other. And so that's a special thing and a great thing to be able to reconnect with old friends and yeah, have you closer by.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say I went through a similar experience with the kids too in the current house. I mean, but I guess a word of advice, probably the garage where I'm at the moment is the best place to let kids go nuts with paint. You know, obviously darker tones can make it more difficult to repaint over. But the garage was like I let them go nuts, and then I repainted it with primer and white. So,
Yes.
but back to you.
Yes. No, that's because their rooms were, we still had carpeting to be redone. So if they got it on the floor or whatever, didn't really matter at this point. In this kind of being mindful and aware of, I also let them kind of paint in their closet too. And they just, it's splattered all over. So now I kept that. Like I didn't change that. So that's kind of like their thing. And I made them kind of put their initials with the paint so that maybe they can look back in 10 years and see their first paint job. And hopefully it will improve by their teenage years. Maybe not, but yeah, we'll see. So being dad and hearing being in the military, does that mean anything different to you, or is that like a different, like, do you feel like there's anything different of like being a dad that's in the military versus a dad that isn't in the military, of like parenting style or being a dad?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cliches there, and I wasn't a dad before the military. I was already wearing a uniform at 19 and one of the youngest people, and I'm in the Army, by the way, one of the youngest troopers from the very beginning. So I was kind of a kid who needed a dad, or other people at that age need a dad or a father figure to begin with going in. But I don't know, it's just been a learning process. And probably the biggest difference between a traditional dad and a military dad is all the separation. So if I'm gone for 2 or 3 days, which I am even now once a month or more, I can see a change in my children when I call them and we do funny video chat, and they use the apps to, keep it light and catch up with me and break the ice. That's something we do religiously. When I've been away for 2, 3 weeks, a month, 45 days, luckily I did not go overseas, deploy and leave my kids behind, which a lot of people have. I guess I would say I'm privileged to not have experienced that, but I have been away for weeks at a time, month and a half, 2 months, and there's like a big experience when you come back. When you see them, it's emotional. Um, it's a challenge to figure out how to deal with that, and then there's always an adjustment. How they behave because they haven't seen you, and then if you're annoyed or stressed, struggle to discipline them and talk to them and be patient and understanding and all these other things. So probably the one recommendation I have, if I'm going to make a recommendation or guidance, is whether you're military or not, uh, find find something that you can maintain. The one thing I can maintain is almost every night I'll sit down with one or both of my children. I have a daughter and a son, and I'll read to them or just talk to them, try to give them, even tonight, thought-provoking question. Hey, are you upset? How do you feel? You want to talk about something? You can talk about anything. I'll ask them questions like, if you could make a wish, what would you wish for? All these different types of things that I just instinctively come up with to get them to talk to me, or kind of let it out. Because growing up, I was not a kid or a guy who could, who had a father figure often to do that. So it's a learning process, but it's worked out for me. So it's kind of what I was getting at, is I would recommend something, whether you're military or not, if you're away from your kid physically or not, try to find something you can keep consistent with them. And I think that really helps them a lot.
I completely agree. And it sounds like you've created your own let it out now, right? That when you do it yourself, that you pass it on to your kids there. And that's great that you give them kind of different questions and make them stop and think too. I think you said a lot of great things to touch on there. I think the first one I just kind of heard that was really profound, I feel like, was and maybe right because I'm not in the military, I didn't never. Maybe I would think about it, but maybe more subconsciously than consciously. If right when you started, you were 18, 19 years old, and you were still a young adult, young man, and saying that needing or wanting a father figure, and not just you, right? That's probably a big thing. So that kind of helped created and made like who you are, right? Who you are now as a dad probably is what I was hearing there. That sounds like from your experience that your military helped you find that dad or find that what you were missing.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, I had a unique experience that probably a good portion of people had, where my biological father wasn't around much. My stepfather was around when he was around, and he happened to be military, ironically. Not full-time, just did a couple tours in Vietnam, so he had his own personality. But I think if you have a father figure, be it your real dad or someone else that's around throughout childhood, that's wonderful. You should appreciate that. People like myself didn't, but I did have comings and goings of grandfather, stepfather, father figures that would show me glimpses of what right looks like. And then I think as an adult now, I just try to mold together what I think is right, what people around me, especially adult male father figures, what they've done, and try to find my own way. So maybe it's better that way. Maybe you get to develop and become the greatest version of yourself. But other people have, like an example, somewhat related to the topic. I have 3 cousins, and I have an uncle who, love him dearly as well, but he, in a lot of ways, kind of showed me periodically what I wouldn't want in a father figure. So maybe what they've experienced, and I haven't asked them straight out, maybe they disagree with me, but from what I could see, maybe the way they've grown up or the way they are might be a reflection, good or bad, of a steady father, whereas I didn't have that. So I don't know if that makes me a better or worse father, but it definitely made me more alert of what I don't want to do and what I would like my son to do when he gets older.
Yeah, I think you're touching on every reason and every point that I'm creating and making DADennial. I think what you're describing there, that there is no right or wrong, and that we don't know, and that we don't share, that we don't talk about it enough, whether it's a family uncle, whether it's a friend, that we kind of go through this huge experience, this large part of our life, raising kids with all these different thoughts and beliefs and ideas of, right, we can kind of have some sense now as adults of, well, that didn't work well, I didn't like when that was done to me, or I didn't like that, I'm not going to do that, but these are things I did like. But the DADennial piece of being thankful that you're talking about it is helpful, I'm sure, for a lot of people to hear it. That that when more people I talk to, the more dads that bring up their own stories, that people can relate to it, and people can pick and choose themselves of what works, what doesn't, what ideas, things like that. And I think that's an important piece that dads in general are learning and trying to get the support. That's what this is hopefully all about. I think that's important for you, to share that and to have those questions.
Yeah, and you actually kind of reminded me of something that's probably worth sharing. Over the years, especially for a couple of years there, I was so busy and traveling so much, again, once or twice a month, sometimes for long stints, that when I'm around, I try to go overboard, which I think is a good thing, because I didn't have that as a child. Last week, I went with my daughter's school to the zoo on a school trip, something I never did as a kid with parents. My mother was always working, father wasn't around. That was awesome. I had to take a deliberate day off of work, but it was totally worth it. And then I've done some other things, like last week I came into a school, which I've made a point to do a few times this year. They allow you, after COVID and everything that people forget, they allow parents to come in and have lunch with their kids. So for the 3rd or 4th time this year, again last week, I came in, It took an hour because the kids are in different grades, different times. But I ate up an hour on a work day and was lucky enough to be able to do that, of course. Just seeing the look on my kids' face light up when they see me there at the school. They're like, wow, I'm so proud. My dad's here. Like, hey, guys, look at my dad. You know, it's just, it's a little thing that you can do that's probably pretty impactful, at least for that period of time for your kid. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of it, I didn't have a lot of those experiences. So
we make up for it. We've learned this is one of the positives of where we are as dads and the current generation, 2023, that it is allowed. It isn't, the way it used to be. You can take that deliberate day off. We are more aware of that feeling of what we didn't have and what we wish we did have. Those kind of really stick with you, and now you're able to say that I know how I would have felt if a parent of mine was there to able to go to the zoo or come to lunch and see me, and now I get to have that experience and see the look in my kid's face. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's something that, that's where I kind of go with that, being mindful and aware of how much that means to them and how much it also means to me. And I'm sure maybe you do this too in your own way. And I know when I have that experience, as you're talking about, that I also tell my kids, I was like, this is something a dad didn't have, and I'm really special and glad that I could come with you to lunch or go on a field trip or whatever, whatever it is. Strawberry picking, I think, was the last thing I did with my kids. That I took a day off, and my kids had off, that whatever, it was a teacher day, and we went strawberry picking. That was something I never did, but got to take my kids, and that was a fun, messy experience, but an experience nonetheless.
Yeah, those are great things to do. I mean, I have hundreds of photos and videos and memories of stuff like that over the years. And I guess related to that too, like something I try to tell my kids in terms of that subject is, when they're upset or they have a bad day. Today was a rainy day. Last weekend was really rainy. I could see my son was kind of down about it because he can't go out and play with his friends. And I always try to tell him too, hey, life's full of breaks, but as long as you have a lot more good memories than bad, you're living a full life. So.
No, that's important teaching, right? I think that's I was having this conversation, I feel like multiple times recently than any other time. And that is, this kind of goes through parenting and styles and dads of, we know what not to do. We have an idea of like, I don't want to be this dad. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be disciplinarian, or, I want to be a more loving, caring dad and, but it's hard too, because we don't have that template. We don't know of, for a lot of us, I feel like, myself included, of what that looks like, right? And that's where that support comes from. That's where this talking comes from, of making sure we're like on the right page of like, all right, I am doing the right thing, and all right, I am, feel like I am doing the right thing with my kids, and trying to talk to them. I think that's important to kind of let it be known that we're trying all these different things to see what works. And I think sometimes as a parent now that we get, like, we know what we know, and we know how to be a friend. So I feel like sometimes parents fall in that trap of, I don't know how to be a dad because dad is a bad thing in my mind. Like, dad was bad, not negative in my life. So I know how to be a friend, and we kind of forget that part of that parent and that advice piece, and that kind of, sometimes it's tough. Sometimes it's also your kids, you see your son having difficulty because he can't go out and play with his friends, and you're aware enough to know of, all right, here's a time to be a parent, not just a friend, but I can be his dad and try to give him some advice, something that maybe today, but definitely in the future, he'll remember that and kind of use that as a mantra, a piece of life that he'll remember of, oh yeah, dad used to tell me this. So now it'll be a positive, right? You kind of, the main thing of this and DADennial and psychology of parenting now is breaking that cycle, right? You're breaking that cycle of what you saw, what you lived through. You're not repeating that. You're stopping that, making it better for yourself and your kids and your family. You're changing it, breaking the cycle, which is important. That's a big.
Yeah, and it can be it can be the other side of it too. Example, my son had a soccer tournament yesterday, he played multiple games, and he's pretty good. But I notice he's lazy sometimes, or he likes to walk down the field or take it easy, score a goal, block a shot, and then take it easy. And although I have head coached his baseball team and helped out with other sports, yesterday, for example, we were in a big indoor facility, and I'm kind of leaning against the ice, or not the ice, the glass. I'm thinking of hockey because it looks like a hockey rink, and I'm occasionally barking at him, and he happened to be close by me at one point, and there's other parents there, my wife's there, and I'm joking around, and I'm like, "Hey Ben, you need it." His name's Ben. I'm like, "Hey Ben, you need a pair of sunglasses?" And he kind of, as he's slowly walking up the field, he's looking at me. He's like, "What do you mean, Dad?" I said, "Well, it looks like you're just kind of hanging out there, so you might as well put on a pair of sunglasses and just take it easy." So I guess what my point is sometimes I have to be real pushy with him and bark at him and be the dad that, a lot of us have to be. But at the same time, I try to pat him on the back and congratulate him and be somewhere in between. Whereas the moms seem to be more of a, don't bark at him, don't put him down, don't kind of coddle him. But definitely as a dad,
You're trying to figure out where that line is.
yeah, and if it's in your personality, because not every dad's going to be pushy, and I'm not the pushiest dad, but occasionally I can be, and for my kids, I think it helps.
Yeah, you got to figure out what works for you and your kids, and trying to figure out that you're going in uncharted territories. Think of so many things you've done in life that you don't know what it looks like, right? You're kind of goes what I was saying. If you don't have that template of here's what I know what happens when my dad said this, you don't have that. So you're kind of branching out of like, I think if I say this will get through to him because I'm creating this new thing. It's starting a business, like something that's new at it. You don't not totally certain. You have ideas and thoughts of what doesn't work, and you have some ideas of what does work. So trying to find what works for you. I think you were saying too, kind of on the kids' part and for yourself, of that when you're away for a couple of days, that things change and it's even tough to kind of come back. And how does that work for you? Of like, what do you do for yourself? Because I think you're right. If you just kind of jump right back into it, you don't have that any moment to digest of, all right, I'm not on the road, I'm not doing this or that, I'm back at home, and that can be really difficult, I assume, huh?
Yeah, and also, your wife, girlfriend, mother figure in the home, if you will, partner even, is going to be stressed and missing you and needing a break, and maybe not willing or able to either be more of a disciplinarian or less, or be the fun dad or mom or whatever, adult figure in their life. For me, my wife needs a break, so I try to give her the break. I try to take the kids out for ice cream or a treat, put them in the car and just go do something fun. Anything from go to a movie, go to the arcade, go play sports, go for a walk with the dog, just something to take their mind off and give them something fun and a positive memory of me coming back. Because honestly, when you go away as a dad, your kids are probably just going to remember or think of the negative side that you're gone. So it's important, I think, to make an impact when you come home. And I love the fact that sometimes I'll drive right up here and park the car, garage doors open, and at least one of my kids will run out and give me a hug. And that's surprising sometimes. And it's awkward sometimes because my kids will have a friend over, and the friend probably has never or barely ever experienced that. But for my kids, it's a regular thing. Oh my God, Dad's been gone for days. I'm so happy to see him. And then the other kids from the neighborhood are like, he's your dad. What's the big deal?
Yeah, it's a new normal. Yeah. But I'm like touching on too is that you do a great job of reacclimating and including your kids and, finding those happy memories. It's also important, I guess, in that self-care piece of, I guess I'm curious of, so what do you do for yourself as what we call in therapy world coping skills, or just kind of self-care of, exercise or whatever, different people, different things, music. What do you like to do to for self-care for yourself as a dad, as a guy?
Yeah, I mean, I do martial arts. I'm into music and play instruments and exercise a lot. Those are all my outlets. I was going to mention, I don't know if you talked about it on the show or a different episode about, post COVID or during COVID, a lot of people are teleworking because I lived through that too. I teleworked for 3 months during the height of it. And it was interesting as a dad because we did everything from dig holes in the backyard and make a putt-putt golf course to lifting weights with gallons of water to all sorts of stuff. So I can imagine there's probably dads out there that are teleworking all the time, and they're always home, never away. So they have a very different experience, but I can relate for a few months.
Yeah, no, even for me, that is my normal of the stay-at-home dad. At least my kids are, at least the youngest one's in preschool now, but yeah, especially through COVID of home all day and what do you do to stay sane? And that's where DADennial came from, is as I was working with families and making my new normal of telehealth, which we'd heard about, but I've never done. I've always done therapy in an office and with someone in front of me. So it took an adjustment too. And then, just hearing families and dads and parents just kind of struggle with what you're talking about of how do we stay sane? How do we, we're talking more about being a dad. That kind of created the whole DADennial thought in my mind of the support, just kind of podcasts, these kind of things are needed. And that's where it stemmed from. But yeah, no, you're right. I think that gave a lot of parents in general an experience, a thought of like, wait a minute, I don't have to commute 2 hours a day, right? Some people do. So if you work in, retail, hotel, and things like that, of course you do. But a lot of the jobs that, like my wife and I, we can do remotely, and seeing that of, okay, so we don't have to commute, we don't have to have as crazy as of a juggling schedule as we used to have. And yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. You're talking about random things that you did, and I remember one thing I bought was it was like a box fill. I think it was like a pound or two of dirt from the Ozarks that had a chance of finding like some kind of quartz or things in it like that. It was like supposed to be this, so we're just sifting through dirt for like 6 straight days. Just we bought a sifter and was sitting in the basement just sifting through dirt, just seeing what we find. And obviously we didn't find anything. Obviously I'm sure I just spent $25 on dirt. It wasn't that probably just from the backyard up the road, but hey, it's when you're, I don't know if you've done this now too, but now that I've moved into this new house and finally unpacked everything that we had when we moved down here, was now I'm like kind of going through COVID stuff. Like, wow, I really was really was not getting on the brink there. To my card collections, buying dirt, just random stuff that I had bought. Like, yeah, it was getting pretty desperate there. But yeah, so now I'm curious of, now we talked about your coping skills, and I think, that's a good one about doing martial arts. That's a good release. That's a good time out, I'm sure. So what's your, you heard me do a let it out now, and you were talking about your kids and letting it out. Do you happen to have a let it out for yourself this evening? Whatever you want. That's something that's just, that when you stop and you think about it for 10 seconds today, of positive, negative, something frustrating, something good, something in between. It can be whatever you want.
Yeah, I think it's just been different activities. I mean, was never really big into video games. Luckily, my son's not big into it, but every once in a while we'll play, and that's a positive, fun thing that brings back memories. We went to the Super Mario Brothers movie the other day, and that brought back a lot of memories. And we went, just my son and I, because my daughter's not really into that. So that was fun. But yeah, we've done a lot of stuff over the years. My son got into skateboarding. I was big into skateboarding for a few years. So it's just kind of reliving your childhood, but trying to do the things that you really enjoyed, and trying to encourage your kids to consider doing them. But on the other side of it, my kids are in a lot of ways very different from me. What they like is not really what I did as a kid, but that's okay. I mean, they're having fun, and I can fake the funk, as they say, as a dad, enough while they're young.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, positive, kind of letting it out of, to spending time, going to the Mario movie. So I try to do one of these a day in my mind of whatever it is that's on my mind, that it just helps me stop and think of like, what is it that I'm feeling or kind of going through. And actually one was the Mario movie, because thanks to COVID that I never was able to take my oldest to a movie yet. So it was actually the first movie that I got to take both of them, my 6 and 3-year-old. And they actually sat through it all and enjoyed it, and brought back memories too. And I actually thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and was just having a great time, just eating popcorn and spending time with my kids as they're spilling vitamin water all over the place. But it's memories.
Yeah, and I was going to say the kids in this generation seem like, I don't know if it's the connection to devices and tablets and TV, but I know my kids every single day, especially if they're home, they're expecting to do something, to be social with friends, or if they're not holding a tablet, which I think we do a good job of limiting it to a couple hours a day when we can. But I don't remember as a kid being so dependent on, I've got to play with my friends every single day, and I've got to be busy 8 out of 10 hours a day. So I wonder, something to think about, what the other dads out there feel. But I know it's a part-time job keeping my kids occupied. I enjoy it, but it's a labor of love, as they say. But it's also quite a challenge, because to do. My kids would still be looking for something to do, and I would have to fill the gap of something for them to do, regardless of if I know what to do or I have time to do it.
Well, maybe I'm speaking more personally because I know you, but I think it's been a big jump for you, right, of being a parent now and kind of taking on that task, and kind of it's not just you, but in general for people, guys too, of what we experience as kids. And it's kind of like reliving all that again as when we have kids, of, oh yeah, I remember what would happen to me if I did that kind of thing, or what would be said. And it's kind of like reliving it all again for a lot of people, and that could be difficult on top of it. So it's really good and healthy that you're aware of it all, and you feel like you're understanding of like how positive and how good having these interactions are when you come home, when you have the time, when but also knowing too of when things maybe need to be said to push your kid along when he's not maybe giving a full effort or doing his best or trying. And I think the tablet piece though, that will be many, I'm sure, podcasts in the future here. That's something I've been dealing with for many years. I've seen a big rise in that since I started in therapy field in 2010, 2011. That now it's an actual addiction. It's in the DSM as an addiction. So now it's known, and now it's a medical number and code to it that has a, thing to it, but we still haven't figured out a cure. Right? We still haven't figured out we know just less is better, but when they're addicted and they're fully engaged in it, I from what I've seen and what I believe, this is just my own kind of therapy and side note of, the sooner that you start, I would say, like if you see a 7, 8-year-old, say, or 6, 5-year-old, whatever the case is, and you're having trouble with the tablet, of if you don't work on it now, imagine that 10 years from now, that's going to be 1,000 times worse. Because now you're dealing with 15, 16, 17-year-olds. So yeah, it's not going to be easy, but when you start working with, time limits, structure, kind of like, this is what we do. If you have certain time, if you have an hour of screen time, you have, you can watch 2 episodes of whatever, and that's just normalized, right? It's whatever becomes normal. Just think about it in your own life of what was normal for your life as a kid growing up, and that's what you kind of went along with because that was what normal was. So it's this, where you kind of create that structure and discipline in a way too of, this is our normal. This is what we do, and you can't just have the tablet. That's, you're gonna have a fit. That's okay. You're 6, 7 years old. I'd rather deal with that 6 or 7 than 17, 18. You're having a fit at 18. Yeah. There's nothing more I can do. You're an adult, and now we have a bigger problem of, now it's a societal problem which we're facing too. And yeah, that's definitely something that will be ongoing as TikTok and Twitter and all these social media avenues and websites keep coming up. So,
yeah, I guess probably getting into closing here, but I was more worried about that a couple of years ago, and now I realize maybe I'm lucky, but both of my children seem to be very socially oriented in a positive way. So now I don't feel like they're addicted. It's more to keep them from being bored.
Yeah.
But as they're getting older now, and they're 9 and 7, that was 2 years ago. They still prefer to be outside with their friends or doing something with their friends, which usually is not on a tablet. It's on a trampoline or riding a bike, going down to the lake, or playing games together. So
that's exactly it.
I guess just to give people hope, if this is helpful, as your kids get to be approaching 10, if they prefer to be with their friends and you can get them out every single day out of the house with their friends or with you, not on a tablet, you're doing enough to hopefully make that impact. Because I'm no longer that worried about what I was worried about a couple of years ago. Because my kids, again, all day at school, activities after school almost every day. On the weekend, I just take them to a soccer game if they're playing one, or take them to, as I said, movies, arcade, park, 20 other things, birthday parties. If you stay consistent with that, you're probably going to be okay.
Yep. Well, that's exactly the way of kind of going about it, of creating that you were worried about it. And that kind of goes to the DADennial piece of, right, you had these thoughts in your mind, but who else can you go to? Who else, do you feel like, I'm sure you probably felt alone at the time too. Am I the only one going through this? Like, what's going on? But you worked your way through it and out of it into a place where, right, you created a sort of, structure and normalcy to them. If you go out, you go play with your friends, they created friends. And now that you kind of, created that template of, this is what you do, this is normal. You play on your tablet here and there, is right. My kids do too. If you have time, you can do that. And if it's rainy, if it's certain days, certain times, but that's not the normal, right? The normal isn't you come home and you sit on it for 3 hours. That's not the normal. That's where, that change can happen as you're seeing. So that is a great positive. And hopefully using a group like this as hopefully I try to expand for dads that do have concerns or worries or ideas, that, they can post it on Facebook. And obviously I always encourage questions or your own lions and things like that to be posted. And, thoughts and ideas are always encouraged on the Facebook page or the website, DADennial.com. But yeah, I will. I will ask you though, if you thought of any of this question though, but if for helping dads or people in general that haven't been to therapy, or just kind of like, one of those things of, I always feel like therapists always are kind of that to other people of on a pedestal almost, right? Or people are like, so that's why I started seeing if anyone, when I interview people, of what question do you have for a therapist? Obviously there's a fine line, but and anything to like, for yourself, or things that you've heard, or things that you kind of would be like, to kind of make it therapy not as much of a, that thing that it can be sometimes for people through that learned behavior sometimes for past generations, but also in the military too. I think is still that stigma, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that therapy can have, even though from what my understanding is that is offered, there's through the VA that there is.
It's a stigma, but it's more, I think, for military folks, it's more having the time and the will to do it. I know I'm not afraid to say that I've, gone to counseling a few times over the years. Mm-hmm. Usually it was family related though. Most of the time it was to check on the marriage, check on what's going on with family, or more times than not to check on my kids, to make sure that there's not something eating them up that they needed to let out, talk to somebody. besides their parents.
Mm-hmm.
I've always said, when I retired or have more time, I'm in my early 40s, so I'm young enough where I can hopefully have enough time to address those things later in life. I wish I had more time to address them, and so I don't know. I guess across the board, it's hard to break the stigma, and military or not, go talk to somebody, but it is helpful. And I think if you can't talk to somebody, what I do, one of the things I do that helps over the years is I challenge myself. A couple of years ago after COVID, I decided to do a triathlon. I'd done one before, but not a longer one, if you will.
Yeah.
So also therapy, I think it doesn't have to be a therapist. A buddy of mine I was working with, who's even more fit than me, which I guess isn't saying that much, but definitely more fitness minded.
Mm-hmm.
I buddied up with him. We bought road bikes and started biking every couple days together, and occasionally lifting weights, swimming, because if you're doing a triathlon, for example, you're gonna have to do swimming and running and biking. I really think that was, like, post-COVID, the best therapy I could get, because I had a lot of time to myself, but to my thoughts, away from family, wife and kids for half hour at a time, early in the morning, evening, lunch break. So I would say a combination of counseling and doing something really healthy for yourself, like some form of exercise. It could even be walking the dog.
Right. Exactly.
That's
Those are all
probably the number 1 and 2 thing I would suggest.
Yeah, that's definitely a great coping skill, and I think you said it exactly right. Of it doesn't have to be a therapist per se. It can be a trainer. It's anything that's of support, right? It was something that you wanted to do, and you found that support. You found that person to help you achieve that goal, and that the therapy comes in many different facets, and that's great that you found your way of letting it out and kind of achieving a goal that was on your list, and that's awesome that you did that. Congratulations. So if there was, like, any question that you would have or that you've heard, I think it's that you would want to ask a therapist or anyone that you hear of, like, to kind of destigmatize therapy, that maybe I could answer or try to bring down.
Well, I've bounced ideas off you over the years sparingly, but I guess in lieu of a therapist, what could you do as a dad to kind of be not so much a therapist, but how could you better lend an ear to your children, and how do you tell if it's time to get them to a therapist? Maybe that's an easy decision if they're really. For me, it was having issues at school. Social environments with my son got me to the point a couple times where I thought, okay, he needs to be in a therapist environment or in a social group, which he's done a couple times. That really helped, where he was with other kids that were having a hard time, and you really don't know, are these kids ADHD, which it seems like that's an easy diagnosis, sadly, for a lot of kids, when maybe they aren't. But putting my son in environments like that a couple times for us helped, because we figured out what works, what doesn't. Maybe having him or her with a group of kids that are going through the same thing helps them cope, and it helps you understand where you're at.
Yep.
So I'm telling you more than asking you. But that's what helped me. So what are your thoughts, Mike?
My thought is, I think you did a great job of that awareness. I think a lot of parents find out through the school, because the educators are the ones that spend so much time with kids, so they can pinpoint when something is not right, or maybe an assessment needs to be done, or talking to the parents about what's going on, at home or after school. So I think that kind of shows, hopefully for you too, that you were aware of, you were seeing things, and that's good that the school reached out, and I think that's good that you kind of recognized it too, that maybe he needed to talk to someone, or just kind of needed that support. And I think that's kind of that broad kind of thing that we're talking about here is support. If you're teaching your kid, it's okay to find support, or because obviously from what I know about you, that you moved around, and that can be tough for a kid, and that transition, as I worried for my own kid, of when we just moved from up north and moved to a new state, new town, and having him go to school, of trying to make it as smooth as possible and acclimate him as well, and just kind of having those feelers out of, let me see how he's doing. Does he need social? Does he need help at school? And that's the great parenting part, and the support, hopefully, too, of as what we're doing, of asking these questions to friends and family to see if, hey, my kid's struggling. What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? Just trying to help each other out, I think, is a big part of it too. Because, especially when they're younger, we have trouble of that diagnosis of, all right, is it hyperactivity or something going on? Is it not paying attention? Is it right? Because there's so many different factors that can be going on in a kid's life outside of school that we don't want to jump to, well, it could be this or this as a diagnosis, or it could just be of, kid just started a new school, has trouble making friends. That can be enough right there where, fidgeting, having trouble paying attention, feeling anxious. There's many different factors that could be going on.
Sometimes it's just they don't get along with a specific kid too.
Yep.
My child, one of my children, has had issues on the bus with one friend who used to be a very good friend, and now they're competing for friendship with another kid. Mm-hmm. Or there's a kid in school that they don't get along with, and you follow the pattern of, okay, 3 times a week for 3 weeks, it's the same kid. Well, teacher, separate them. And next year, hopefully they're not in the same class. And honestly, that's what happened to one of my children. Wasn't getting along with somebody, and then the next year they were in a different class, so the problem resolved itself. But the kid learned resiliency, to deal with people you don't like, or people that don't like you, or
right. I would say it's
dealing with different things. So.
My summary would be of always go with your gut. You know your kid better than anyone else, and I always tell parents, when I did a lot of family therapy and working in schools and IEPs, that you have to be your own best advocate. So if you think something's not right or something's not, going right with your kid, go with it, because there's a chance that you're right, because you know your kid the best usually. And unfortunately too, of that, trying to get help for your kid at school, whether it's academic or whether it's social or whatever the case is, or a parent telling a teacher of, you got to look out for these 2 kids because they don't really like each other now. You have to be your own best advocate for your kid, because sometimes, teachers are taking care of 30 different kids sometimes, and it's tough for your kid to get the awareness that and the eyes on them that maybe they need sometimes. And it's not the teacher's fault. They're overworked and underpaid too. So it's the system, and we have to kind of do our part too to help take care of our kids. So they do have a different way of growing up, and we've broken the cycle. And I'm personally curious to see, maybe you are too, of what that looks like for the next generation when our kids will have grandkids maybe someday.
Yeah.
So, well, that being said, yes, I will not take up any more of your time, and let you get some sleep so you can be up at 0500, if I said that right.
It'll be 6 probably, but yeah.
06. But
my early days are hopefully behind me, at least for now.
Yeah, that's good. But I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your knowledge and experience that you have shared here tonight. And I think it will be a great resource for a lot of people in general, but I think the military too. I think what you were able to say tonight about your own personal story in life, helps break that stigma, helps kind of create that support. And that piece of DADennial.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right.
It's therapy just speaking.
I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank everyone for subscribing. to DADennial and on your favorite podcast platform. We are on Apple, Spotify, and on many others. I want you to be able to go to DADennial.com, DADENNIAL.com, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'll be trying to put up at least one weekly blog kind of idea for a lion or something that's going on this week, or a post that you people put out there on Facebook. Nice post, please. On LinkedIn. Things like that to let me know how this is helping, or things that are on your mind, or questions or thoughts that I can bring up on the show. I'd love to hear them. I'd love to know what your feedback is. I hope to be continuing more and more of these. I know DADennial can be in your neighborhood too. So let's all work together. Let's show our support. Let's show how much we are all lions and all ones as DADennials today. Thank you.